Hello, Stanley again. Podcast number 4 for small contractors in a small town. Today we're going to talk about just systems. You probably heard me say this before. We're going to say a lot. Have a system for everything you do. Have some kind of system. Just have a way of going about everything you do. From how you go to your projects and review them for the first time, how you talk to your clients, what you tell them. I'm always careful not to promise things to clients and try not to say something that you're going to be stuck with all the way through, or how you talk to them, how you communicate with them, how you run your jobs, how you go about your whole business. Everything needs to have some kind of a system of going about it. If you don't have systems and have systems in place, and you get a project that's going really aggressively fast and going, it can overrun you. It can overwhelm your team, your staff, your employees, your subcontractors, yourself. But if you have systems, they'll pull you out of it. You'll steady the ship, and you'll get yourself through a lot of issues if you have some kind of system. There's two major things to a construction company. There's the production part of your company, and there's the administration part of your company. The production, that's the field. That's the work out at the job site, whether that be somebody's home or a raw piece of dirt you're turning into a ground-up building. Whatever it is, that's that field effort. That's your production part of your company, and that takes a lot of systems to track that. The first thing that comes up is a schedule. You have a schedule. Who's coming when you grading, when you pouring concrete, when is the framing going to happen, when's the electricians and plumbers coming in. If you're remodeling, when you're going to do the demo, then what are you going to do first? You're going to lay the floor, build the cabinets on top, or you're going to put the cabinets first and butt the flooring to it. A lot of things going in. So you start with a schedule in your field, but that's a system. A schedule is a part of a system. Have a way of going about doing your production, of building your projects. You got to have staffing of your field. Is it yourself? You're running all your jobs? Is it superintendents that you're hiring, or foremans? Very important, who they are, how they communicate. Is everybody do they have pads? Do they have pads out there that they can take information electronically and send it? Are they just out there with a notepad in their hand and writing everything down? What's the way, the systems that the field staff has to execute the project and communicate with everybody needs to communicate with the architects, the designers, the city, the inspectors, that kind of stuff. So everything needs to have a kind of a system. You going to get a lot of trouble if you don't have a way of going about things. How does the superintendents communicate if you have somebody else running your jobs? Are you just verbal? Do they just tell everybody everything? We have a saying that verbal communication between humans is usually about 60-70% successful. That means 25, 30, 35% of the time people are talking and they're not understanding. They're not really communicating. They're talking, they're shaking their head, yeah, I understand. And then you come back the next day and go, what happened? We talked about this yesterday. And they got a total different meaning on what you said. I don't recommend a lot of verbal communication. I recommend everything in writing. And you've probably already been through this in your life where you got into he said. Well, I said this. No, you didn't. You said that. No, I said no. Here you go. You're in one of those he said things that it's just, you can have those several a day. They'll drive you crazy. So where's the writing? Didn't you send a text or an email? Didn't you write something down? Do you have a drawing? Do you have a picture? What do we do to document this communication amongst humans? Those are the things I'm talking about, having a system. What's your system of communication on a job site? What's your system of executing the schedule? What's the system of how things are going to come to the project? Where are they going to lay down? So you want to have what's called a site utilization. How are you utilizing that site to get that project built? When things come, do you have a place for them? Does it make sense? Do you have to keep moving something all the time because you keep putting it in the way of something else? What do you have to keep yourself moving smoothly through your project in a timely, accurate, professional manner? How are you going to do that? So your field staff is one of your systems. How you set the job up. It has a lot of systems. How do you inspect things? Do you have any kind of list to check things off? How do you send questions to the designers? How do you get questions back in? How do you keep the documents on the drawing on the construction site? Do you let them just get all piled up and jumbled up? Do you have them in order? How do you keep things that change? How do you mark that in a set of documents? How do you keep things that are happening, inspections, inspection reports? Do you have file cabinets? Do you have places to put things? We're getting more and more electronic. Technology is just going through the roof, but still a lot of times we can't get away from paper. I know a lot of people are trying to make everything electronic, but we're still pretty heavily paper oriented in construction. So what systems you have to keep all that in place? So there's a lot of stuff. In your office, now that's called the administrative side of your company. You better have some systems there, obviously, because almost all of that is, let's call it paperwork. A lot of it can be on a computer, it can be electronic paperwork. But, how do you hire your subcontractors? We'll talk about subcontracts in another podcast, but how do you hire subcontractors? How do you communicate with them? How do you invoice when they're working? How do you get the invoices from them? How do you get invoices into your client? How do you collect money? How do you pay people? In contracting, it's recommended that you have different bank accounts for different jobs. That's very hard. Very few people do that. Technically, you're not supposed to commingle money from one project mixed with the other. So in other words, you have 3 projects and all the money goes in one account. That's technically commingling. If you get into a situation where one job comes up short, it could be a problem for you. So what systems do you have for different bank accounts? How are you paying people? How are you tracking everything that's happening on a job? Tracking the schedule, the progress. How do you buy a job? What's called buying out a job. When you get hired to do a job, how do you get everybody hired and get all the products ordered and coming? Called a buyout. What systems do you have for that? And a lot of projects are going to want to see the products before you actually purchase them and put them in. That's called submitting. That's called submittals. They want to see the tile before they say, yeah, that's the tile I'm talking about. Order that one right there. So you need to get tile samples, and how do you label them and log them and keep them organized so you know that you're buying the right tiles, the right paint colors. A lot of people want paint's one of the big ones. They want to see paint drawdowns. They want to actually see the colors, and they might change a few shades. And how do you administrate all that? How do you keep all that going? We have to have systems for every single thing. Everything you do, just think, okay, what's my system I need for this? What a system I need for that? Filing, how do you keep all these things? How long do you keep them? Myself personally, I never throw anything away. I've got everything from 20 years ago, and you'd be shocked what happens. There's an issue here with California that if there's a latent defect discovered, you're on the hook for 10 years. So you need to pretty much keep things for at least a decade. We'll get more into those kind of liabilities, latent defects versus product defects, and what they mean. And it depends on what state you're in. Some states are still pretty loose. Others are very litigated and very administrative. So you got to know about that. So the key is in all things you do, come up with a mechanical, electronic, system, some kind of way that you can keep control of things. You know what's happening. You know what's anticipated going to happen. How to check progress. Is it happening? Didn't happen. Okay, what do we got to do now to get it back up to where it should be? Why did this happen? So we make sure it doesn't happen again. How to know the status of everything. How much somebody is doing the job for, and how much you've already paid them, and how much is less. They've had change orders. How much more then do you owe them? How much have you collected from an owner? How much is less? We'll get into pay applications and that stuff later. But if you're having the owner retain money, how much is retained? What's been retained on and not? What's retainage mean? That kind of stuff. Everything's got to have a system. Everything's got to have some kind of way of documenting it, confirming it, checking it, administrating it, figuring it out in all aspects. Just you'll hear me go through these podcasts, talk about get this system for this and get a system for that. Just have a system. you'll find that you'll get yourself through projects better. You'll get yourself through conflicts. When things start going really south on you, you'll be able to pull yourself and the project back out of it if you have systems in place. If you're just out there shooting from the hip, seat of the pants, everything is just what we call crisis management. You don't do anything until some crisis shows up. Somebody brings you a problem, and then you start working on fixing it. You'll never get out of that crisis management. You'll never get out ahead of the project. It'll run you all the way through the whole process. So right from the get-go, from the how you walk the project and review it, what system do you record the information you need? I'm big into photographs. I take tons of pictures. I still carry just a regular camera around because I don't want to drop my phone and ruin my phone. So I have a regular camera that gets all beat up, and every few years I got to buy a new one. Take a lot of pictures. That's one of my systems, documenting. That helps me also when an owner comes along and said, well, you cracked this over here, you scratched this over here, you broke that over there. And I go, well, no, I didn't. It was broke when we showed up. See, here's the picture of it. You'll find these systems will keep you out of those kind of conflicts. There are some people, unfortunately, be looking for that. They'll be looking to get a whole thing painted because there's a scratch somewhere, and they'll say, well, your guys did it when they came in. And if you have pictures of that, kind of like when you rent a car, they have you walk around it and say, okay, look at look at all the scratches and stuff before you drive off in this car. So we don't come back and start arguing about that later. So you need to have a system for that right from the get-go. Time you walk it, how you go through a set of plans. I have a certain way I go through a set of documents. I actually read every note on a set of documents, and I have highlighters, pens right there, and I highlight things. Different colors mean different things. I have a system of how I go through plans, the notes I make, how that then transports onto my estimate form, the estimating forms I use, my systems of going through that, how I transmit all that to clients. It's in writing, and if it's something that's initial, it's preliminary, then the words on it say preliminary. This isn't a final, this is preliminary. If it's final, it says final. How you go about through the contracts, reading the contract, understanding how to execute them, and then when you get the project awarded and started, how do you start it? How do you get out there and get going? What needs to happen first, second, third, fourth, with an eye towards the end, because you're always your goal is to complete something, to finish it, complete it, finish it. They take it, possess it, love it, want it, and you get paid. That's your goal, is to satisfy your client. You want them to want what you're doing, and they'll pay you for it. So in all things in your business, have a system. I'm not going to say you have to have this system or that system, but you need some kind of system, whatever works for you. Everybody works a little different. Everybody thinks different, retains information differently. Some people have little sticky notes all over the place. That's a system. You can chuckle about it, but that's a system. I use sticky notes. They're stuck all over everything. Whatever it takes, some kind of way for you to execute your business successfully, satisfy your clients, and move from project to project. This is Stanley, podcast number 4, Systems. We'll talk next. Thanks. Bye-bye.